ladies and gentlemen. Hearty welcome to each one of you for this one-day workshop on auditing and assurance standards. This program is organized by the Auditing and Assurance Board of ICAI New Delhi, hosted by us. This is the season for auditing. The Auditing and Assurance Board thought it appropriate to update the knowledge on this issue to all our members and equip them to deliver the right and appropriate audit reports and auditing. The expectation gap is huge between the stakeholders and the auditors. To meet that requirements, I think this is the most important topic. That is how this is most relevant and appropriate. Even the number is little less. I think people are busy with their compliance commitment. Hopefully some more will join in a couple of minutes time. The program overview goes like this. There are 5 technical sessions. The first technical session on this we are going to learn and understand audit quality insights. Learning from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales initiative, false assurance, a documentary film we are going to see. In the next second technical session, overview of auditing standards with emphasis on SA 701, communicating key audit matters in the independent auditor's report. The third technical session, case studies on auditing standards. Fourth and fifth, audit documentation, guidance note on reports on certificate or special purposes. To start the program, in the first technical session, we have an eminent speaker from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. So may I request CA Ganapati to escort the speaker onto the dais, CA Vandhana Saxena. And also welcome her to the floor room, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome her. Thank you, CA Ganapati. Friends, it is my pleasure to introduce the speaker to this august gathering. Vandhana Saxena Korea is the Order of the British Empire. It's like a Padma Shri of India. A fellow chartered accountant, is an award-winning serial entrepreneur who specializes in strategically and operationally building bridges within companies, individuals and other stakeholders. A former IFRS expert and business strategist, she has worked across the UK, Europe and India over the last 22 years. A chartered accountant by profession, she has founded and run multiple companies, with her first one sold to then listed company BPP Professional Education. She went on to found and run their international division for 7 years before founding and now existing a professional skill training company. Now she is retained by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales to assist with strategy and thought leadership in India. A mentor to many, she also coaches and co-authors books with people and institute of repute to share why their strategies succeed, with a special interest in measuring that which cannot be valued. Her strength comes from her diverse background and experience, which includes the following: lived and worked in over 15 different countries, so a unique perspective of challenges within the accounting profession. For over 25 years, publishing and training of hundreds of thousands of individuals to pass professional exams with a view to contributing to business goals, including IFRS, audit and assurance. Her core skill is strategically assessing what needs to be altered in companies such that employees take the lead of amplifying change to improve financial, business, natural and attitude capital. This includes looking at organizational structure, product development, team and individual learning metabolism to create new measurement values. She has been awarded in the Queen's Birthday Honours list announced on 14th June 2008. Vandhana was honoured with the Order of British Empire for her services to trade and investment in India, one of the youngest Asian females to be given the honour. With this brief introduction, I present before you a multifaceted personality, Vandhana Saxena. Please join me to welcome her.
So much. So my accent is very English. Fir bhi dil hai Hindustani. I've been in India for 13 years now. I've run businesses here. I've worked with the Institutes of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales, and with India. And really, thank you for that introduction. I am just very keen that we prepare for the future. And the future isn't audit how we know it. So that's one of the things that I'll be discussing today. So you did the introduction, so I'll skip this slide. So if we think about ICAW and ICAI, they are sister institutes at the end of the day. Both have different strengths and both offer very similar things to their members. On one side we have the highest professional standards, so you know as an ICAI member how important integrity is, how important ethics are, how important strong governance is. The challenge is these things cannot be taught in an exam paper. It's very difficult. And so ICAW wanted to find a different way to tackle some of the issues that we face every day. And what they did was they produced a film after working with multinationals to say what ethical dilemmas have you had and how can we put it into an interesting, an interesting way for our members. Unfortunately, when you watch Tollywood and Bollywood films, you hardly ever hear of the main actor being an accountant, right? You hear of them being business people. You sometimes hear of them being lawyers, but you never hear about accountants because in theory accountants are boring. But we know that we're not boring. And the film is a way to change people's views of what accountancy is. So we have the highest standards of professional excellence and professional standards. So just to give you, you know all about ICAI, just to give you some facts about the English Institute. So there's the top 100 companies that are listed on the UK Stock Exchange. So similar to our Bombay Stock Exchange, we have the FTSE. The FTSE are the largest 100 companies from all over the world that are listed on the UK Stock Exchange. And 95% of them have an ICAEW member. So that shows how much the profession is regarded. Whether it's ICAI or ICAW, it shows that people value what chartered accountants actually bring. 55% of them have qualified accountants as the COO or CEO. And that's very much since the crisis in 2007, 2008. Companies realized they needed people who understood finance, regulation and compliance to be at the top of their organizations. And that's why chartered accountants were chosen to be in this position. And certainly abroad as well as in India, if you are a CA, I don't know any poor CAs. I know only CAs who are doing reasonably well in their careers, if not very, very well. Okay, so I talked at the beginning about some of the changes that are happening in our profession, and it concerns me a lot, and it concerns institutes around the world. What's the future of our profession? So let's look at the current trends in accounting. There are huge changes in technology. From the first time that Tally was introduced to where we are now, it's incredible the changes that technology have brought. There have been changes in regulation. We've seen more compliance coming in. There's been changes in globalization. India is very much part of the global economy and contributes significantly both ways. There's been changes in reporting. Before we were only concerned about profit, now people are talking about natural capital, environmental capital, social capital. These are all things that chartered accountants are going to be expected to give opinions on. I was with V.S. Parthasarathy, who's the CFO of the Mahindra Group. I had lunch with him a couple of weeks ago, and he very proudly showed me Mahindra's integrated reporting financial statements. The integrated reporting financial statements have 5 pillars, which only one of which is financial accounting. The rest is to do with social reporting. So how are our people doing? Are our people happy? What are our retention rates? It's also about natural capital. How are we using the environment? How much pollution are we causing? All of these things are now being accounted for. Yet as a profession, especially in India and South Asia, we're still very much focused on the financial accounting, because that's the one compliance that companies are currently paying us for. If you look at the UK or the US, all listed companies now have to do integrated reports. All listed companies have to prepare gender pay reports, etc., which they get their auditors to validate. So as auditors, you need to broaden your skill set, and I'm sure many of you are doing that, but in the future, that's going to probably bring you in more income than doing your standard financial audits. The increases in digital accounting and automation, machine learning, AI, are leading to non-stop change for us. I don't think the auditing profession has yet realized what an impact blockchain is going to have. Blockchain potentially puts you out of business. If you understand what blockchain is, if all transactions are being verified real time, what is the need of an auditor? So what we're going to need is blockchain auditors, people who really understand how blockchain works, which means you are all going to need technical and technological knowledge to be able to do that. Now, those of you who are in your 50s and 60s, you might be thinking, great, I'm retiring soon, so I don't have to worry about this. But actually, you're all connected with this industry. There's a lot of advice that you can give to the new chartered accountants to be able to build their knowledge in a way that's going to make sure that they're future-proof. Because actually the need of our hour, or the need of the hour, is to be future-proofed. Accountants need to be, and auditors need to be future-proofing. So we're going to need to understand digital accounting and blockchain. Machine learning and AI have huge implications for the audit profession. Machine learning and AI will be able to spot compliance issues straight away within a company so that there's no need for the auditor. So internal audit may increase significantly, but to do internal audit you don't need a professional qualification. So these are all things that we're going to have to be thinking about as we plot our future. And it's certainly something that's taking up a lot of time at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, as well as here in India. So there are some joint projects that are being discussed on blockchain, on artificial intelligence, which should be starting within the next year, so the institutes are supporting each other. So what skills will successful CAs need? The first is, if you really want to be able to add value to your clients, you need to understand technology. You need to understand how different programs are going to support your clients. Your clients are going to start coming to you more because you value add than you do compliance. So those of you who start, and remember it's not too late, this technology is all at a very early stage at the moment. So nobody's out of the game. If you start learning about these technologies now, you are going to be in the forefront, because so few CAs at the moment are looking at this. But you have to understand technology. You have to understand, for example, how many of you have heard of Mingle or Slack? Have you heard of Slack or Mingle? Okay, so these are programs which are nothing to do with accountancy, but drive efficiencies within companies. If you as a CA can suggest to your clients, hey, have you thought about using this in your finance department to make sure you're hitting deadlines, they are going to appreciate you a lot more. And these are not expensive technologies, these are free technologies. Mingle and Slack are free. You just need to understand how to work them. And I would strongly recommend to the branch that perhaps you do a session on these new technologies in addition to the great sessions that you're already running. The second thing about successful CAs in the future, we have noticed across the world, is there are ones who are not reliant on compliance. The ones who are developing an emphasis for judgments, compliance and standards. So looking at principles rather than rules. So that's something, often clients will say, is this acceptable? And we'll say, according to the rule, or according to this section, no it's not, yes it is. Over time, it's not going to be about the rules, it's going to be about judgment, and it's going to be about principles. So we need to be confident about applying the principle, not about knowing the rule. The next is, our clients are looking for business partners. You know what it's like as an auditor. There are times when the client sees you as the enemy, sees you as the person who is looking for fraud, looking for mistakes. If you can show them that you want to be their business partner, it alters the relationship you have with them, and you have the ability to develop new verticals within your organizations. So, for example, in the UK, in the 70s and 80s, the UK was all about compliance, because that's what the government was driving. The government then realized that actually compliance is not what this is about. In order to help the UK economy, they need growth. And growth and compliance are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. If you spend too much time on compliance, you don't have enough time to innovate for growth. So then the government said, we're getting rid of audits for small companies. And small companies in the UK are ones that have, a turnover of less than 5 to 10 crores, right? And they said that we're only going to put in review mechanisms, not audits for those companies. So they basically took the threshold quite high. As a result, CAs were then able to develop different offerings. So they would go to their clients and they would say, how can we help your business become more efficient? How can we help you work out how to use your capital more wisely, etc., etc. And then there was a huge growth in those verticals within the organization. Didn't happen overnight, compliance was still there, but then over time, the value-added services have become much, much bigger than our standard audit services. So, flexible and strategic thinking, so not just thinking about what your client has asked you to think about, but looking wider. So perhaps when you're doing the returns, to say, oh, I noticed you're spending quite a lot on this area, have you thought about, rationalizing your costs by only working with 2 vendors? Something like that is going to be very useful to your clients, because most of your clients don't have such a good understanding of accounting as you do, yeah? Internationally minded, one of my other roles, at the moment I'm on a great break. I sold my last business last year, and so I'm effectively working for the Institute only 6 days a week, and I'm doing a lot of mentoring. One of my roles is that I work with the UK-India Business Council. So the UK-India Business Council is there to promote trade and investment between UK and India. And I'm constantly fighting with the government, and now they've accepted that CAs on both sides play a huge role in the development of trade and investment between the 2 countries. So, for example, the number of startups we have in India and the number of startups we have in the UK, if CAs were paired with those startups, because most startups are great in technology but don't actually understand finance. They run out of money very quickly, or they allocate resources without really monitoring how they're allocating the resources. They have challenges with fundraising, and then they think the problem is their product. It isn't their product, it's the way they've set up their company, which chartered accountants can help with. So I've been working with the UK government on looking at ways to get chartered accountants in India to work with startups in India and the UK to look at how we can do cross-border work. So being more internationally minded, looking at what's going on across the world, is going to help a successful CA. The next point is extremely crucial. It doesn't matter how much you understand the numbers. If you cannot articulate in several ways what the challenges are, then your knowledge is useless, right? So it may help a client with not having to pay a tax liability, but you've got to be able to talk to your clients much more than about the tax liability, so can you articulate in that way? Successful CAs are also networkers. If any of you are interested in doing work with the UK, then speak to me afterwards, because I'd like to put you in touch with people. If any of you are interested in getting the ICAW certification, which after 5 years of your membership with ICAI, you're entitled to just by filling out some forms about yourself, then talk to me. So this is about networking. Equally, I will talk to you about, interests that the UK government have in what's happening in India. The last point is probably something for 5 years or 10 years away, and it is looking at different types of capital. So people are realizing that profit on its own is not enough. We need profit with a conscience or profit with a purpose. And the companies that do really well, the Tatas, the Mahindras, the larger companies, all have profit with a purpose. Their aim is to do more than just make money. And the more we as chartered accountants understand that, and understand what drives our clients, the more we're going to be able to support them. So, going back to this session here, in order to support the profession, one of the things that the Institute has done is they've come up with a video which shows risks, and risks how they manifest within an organisation, from the first event to the last event. So the idea of this video is to raise professional standards, to give you real-life examples, and to show how a small risk can actually bring down the whole of the company if the auditors aren't aware of what's going on. So what I'm going to do is show you this movie, and we're going to stop it every 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to stop it, so it's 45 minutes in total, and it's very, very engaging. It's about a company called D. Merton, and you can see the characters here. The top row shows the senior executive directors on the board. The second row show the non-executive directors. And the last row shows the accountants who are also the auditors. Okay? So we have all these people that we're going to be meeting in the film. And the film is divided into 4 parts. So what we're going to do is watch 10 to 15 minutes of the film, then I'm going to stop it and I'm going to ask you, because this should be an interactive session, I'm going to ask you for the risks that you've spotted that have happened so far. And we're going to do a discussion around them. And I'm going to give you the other risks that we put in, because the whole idea is to get you to see what the bigger picture is. So these are just some stills from the show. The top guy on the left, he is the finance director of the group, the CFO of the D. Merton group, and he's actually relating the story at an MBA seminar, and that's how we go through the story. Now, in order for you to get the most out of this, what I need you to do is to think that whilst this situation may not be applicable to you, many similar situations to this may be. So hopefully in the discussion we should also think about how do we mitigate those risks. What could we have put in to stop those risks from getting worse? Can we mitigate the risks, or can we preempt the risks? 2 different things, right? Preempting, stopping it from happening in the first place. Mitigating it, once it's started, how do we bring it down? Also, the second point, which is really important, all of you are part of teams at your audit firms, you're in partnerships, you have your junior staff. Think about how you communicate with others around you and what impression you're giving. There'll be one scene that you'll see where an audit junior comes to talk to a partner, And you can see that she's quite scared. But the audit partner doesn't treat her very well. And that's something that sometimes we do because we're thinking about what we're thinking about. We don't think it's very hard for them to talk to us. But if we break their trust, they're never going to come back to us with the problems that are happening. So that's what we're trying to look at there. And the last point there, think about what you accept without questioning and what the impact of that could be. Okay? I have a request. I wonder if I could ask you all to move forward. The reason being is they speak in British English, which means they kind of speak fast. So there are subtitles, but I think on these screens the subtitles will be quite small. So can I ask you to move forward a little bit while I get the video, just for your benefit. I think you'll find it much easier if you just move forward a little bit. I promise I'm not going to demand you answer questions. We might need to put the volume up. Volume? Oh, hold on one sec.
Jen,
Just 1 second, it's going to...
I was the CFO of a very profitable high-tech company with revenues of over 400 million. Merton's fortunes have been boosted a few years earlier when it acquired the S1 tech.
Is that loud enough?
Revolutionary radar system. The launch of S1A, our first system, it surpassed all expectations and was followed by 2 more successful versions. I was preparing in January 2011 for the first board meeting to be chaired by Roger Tillman. Roger had been appointed to succeed our long-standing chairman, who had retired from ill health. We'd all been surprised, as we'd expected an appointment from within the existing board. Richard Dalton had arrived as CEO 2 years previously, just before the launch of S1C. While the board had been criticised for the size of Richard's remuneration package, he had delivered. Impressive sales for S1C, solid results from other divisions, and a string of strategic acquisitions. His deferred share bonuses meant that Richard's focus was still on long-term share price growth. At the end of 2010, Merton's rivals had launched a range of new systems. But our next generation S1D system promised to be a game changer and was only a few months away from release. We thought everything was in place for a successful future. But how wrong we all were.
I met last week with Chris Perry, the company's new head of IT. He was concerned about the robustness of the company's defences against attack. Given the value in our innovative designs...
But my committee considered the results of penetration testing only a few months ago, just before Chris arrived. And this didn't raise any significant issues.
But the firm doing the testing was the same firm that designed the defences, and the testing had been confined to the main design database.
Wouldn't that be the main target of any cyber attack?
Of course, but attackers will look for any weak access points across our system.
So what are you proposing?
I think we need an independent assessment of the company's defences to cyber attack across all our systems. As the lead partners were taking off, will your committee be considering whether TYSL should be reappointed as auditors next year? Might make sense to freshen things up a bit after such a long mandate.
Yes, it's all in hand. I've already asked for a proposal. Hello.
Give her time. Liz thought she'd be appointed chair. While she has her supporters, including me, the nominations committee thought you were the stronger candidate. She just thinks with this cyber thing that you were already questioning her judgment.
Why do the auditors think that that's impairment true?
Performing S1A sales. I've been asked to produce a spreadsheet showing cash flow forecasts justifying the current value.
But Tom is currently negotiating a couple of big deals to install the S1A system.
That'll help. But the current value can only be supported by including revenue from S1P and S1C. The auditors are queried whether that's appropriate given how much the technology has been developed away from the original. With S1A revenue only, you're looking at a material write-down.
Well, I hope push back hard. You can't take another big hit like that. You only just hit our profit target.
I'm hardly the right person to argue how much of the original technology you used.
Well, shall I get one of our tech boys to give them the assurance they need?
Does anyone here know what an orange peel paraboloid is?
No, neither did I.
Apparently all three systems have one, demonstrating their similarities. I don't mind admitting that I left that meeting completely baffled. And I don't believe I was the only one.
So, without including S1B and S1C sales in the forecast, a significant impairment would have been required?
Correct. The forecast revenue for S1A was generous to me, given last year's sales and the models on the market.
There appears to be a good market among poorer countries that can't afford the latest models. The company is currently negotiating multiple S1A sales with two smaller.
How definite are these deals?
I've seen signed letters of intent.
Not binding then. But I guess it comes down to how comfortable you are that the newer systems rely on the original technology.
The technology is pretty complex, but we met with the head of technology and came away with sufficient assurance that the S1B and S1C systems are still built around the original technology.
I'm not sure any of us are in a position to second-guess the experts, or your judgment that there's a sufficient link.
Someone's in a good mood. Did you hear? He's standing for senior partner. He's got a good chance. How did you find your first audit?
Oh, too many long nights, too many spreadsheets.
Tell me about it.
I was wondering, how did that issue get resolved in the end? Those payments to Primatel that I showed you?
I mentioned them to Patrick. He met with Richard and got the assurances he needed. I think Richard confirmed that Primetel's engagement had ended.
Was Primatel not a related party?
You told me that the sister had resigned before Primetel was engaged. And Richard told Patrick that none of his family had any continuing interest in Primetel. Enough about that. We're not here to talk about work.
Has everyone had a chance to read the consultant's report? Chris, can you introduce us, please?
Thank you, Roger. The consultants have carried out over 20 different pen tests, analysing a range of vulnerabilities, including browser exploits, DOS attacks, phishing.
Just the findings and the options, please.
Sure. The tests have identified 50 serious flaws in our defences across all systems, including the design database. We're particularly vulnerable because we have 4 different IT systems running within the group, inherited from our acquisitions, and each of them has different levels of protection.
And there are 2 options.
Yes. The first option is a replacement of the central parts of our existing infrastructure. This would take 9 months and involve the outsourcing of some key IT functions.
Won't outsourcing weaken our defences further?
No, not if we use reputable providers and are careful about what functions we outsource. The second option is upgrading our existing infrastructure. This would happen over a period of about 2 to 3 years.
No outsourcing?
Correct, but this is a patch rather than an overhaul. Aside from the cyber risk, we have a pressing need to unify our systems.
We have funding issues.
Option 2 spreads the cost and the cash flow impact over a longer period, so it's manageable. Option 1 is more expensive and involves a big upfront cash outlay. As we're at the limit of our current facilities, it would mean
Negotiating with the bank and higher borrowing costs.
Has someone actually managed to access the systems?
Oh no, but the number of malicious attempts has dramatically risen over the past 12 months.
All unsuccessful.
Any more questions for Chris? No? Thanks, Chris. So, any other views?
It's not something I have any experience of, or frankly understand. Until I read this report, I thought fishing was something you did with a rod.
I'm struggling too. It's not clear to me how real this risk is, but I'm concerned about extending the bank facilities.
I'm getting the sense that I'm the only one favouring the first option. Okay? Let's go with option 2, but on the basis that the project starts as soon as possible.
would you have understood these issues better than Dean Merton's directors? How many of you would have voted for option 2? Okay. The committee's recommendation that TYSL be reappointed as auditors for the next year was also accepted, despite Roger favouring a change. The committee had been persuaded by the proposal that Sarah Hancock would lead next year's engagement. Now, Sarah had been senior manager when Patrick Lyon took over as engagement partner and had subsequently made partner herself. I shared Liz's belief that this was the ideal combination. A new perspective, but from someone who understood how the company operated.
So will this official who requested it get his hands on the charitable donation?
I don't know. You did say sales of S1A should be a priority. We could fund the donation by making a payment to Premington.
Remember the audit partner asking me questions about my connection to Premington.
You said he accepted all your assurances. Didn't even ask for any reports. We could make smaller payments, reduce the attention.
It's still risky.
Do we have a choice?
Okay, so let's first of all make sure we've understood what's happened. So what does this company do? D. Merton, what do they do?
It's a technology industry making some kind of...
Technology, they make missile defense systems. So systems that protect countries or businesses. Okay, so that's what they do. So we have their finance director who's telling this story. And let's start by thinking about a few things. What's the biggest accounting issue that's going on at the moment?
Two accounting issues. So one is impairment.
One is impairment of the missile defense systems. Yeah.
And second is possibly compliance issue of donations, which are probably allowed.
Okay, so there's a donation issue. So let's park that one and let's think about the main one. So they have developed a missile defense system, which is known as S1A. S1A has been going for many years and has been very successful. On top of S1A, they have now built S1B and S1C. Okay? So the big issue that the auditors should be thinking about, are all of these connected or are they separate? Right? Can S1B be made completely separately? Is it a separate technology to S1A? Right? And is S1C a separate technology? What is the company trying to show? That they're connected or not connected? What is the company trying to show?
All connected.
That it's connected. Why do they want to show that the three are connected?
So no impairment loss on S1A.
There would be no impairment loss. Why? Because they have sales of S1A sales of S1B and sales of S1C, if they bring them all together, they cover the cost of the individual systems, right? However, if you treat them separately, maybe, and this is the problem that they've got, is it looks like maybe S1A would not be covering its costs, in which case we would have to say it's an impairment. Okay? So this is the biggest issue that's facing the company. Any questions on that? Everyone clear on that? Now, let's think about that. They have done some testing and they have established with the auditors that it's all connected. But what's the big risk? The chairman said it at the beginning. What's the big concern? What is the big concern?
The firm who did the testing was the same firm who designed the defense.
The firm who did the testing is the same firm that developed the system. This is like auditors auditing a set of accounts that they've actually prepared, right? So that's one issue. That's to do with the security of the system, so that's a very good point. Anything else?
But I think connected with this, the point is probably competition is launching much more technologies which might sort of dilute their existing position.
Absolutely. So there are competitors in the market who are building similar defense systems. Now, if you notice, at one point, somebody said S1A sales are continuing because countries that can't afford to develop their own systems are still buying it, right? So that's, you know, lower economy or less developed countries are buying those systems. So they're saying they still have a market for it. So we know that there's potentially an issue with impairment, and that's something that we should be, as auditors, it should be triggered in our mind that was it done properly or not. At this stage, we're not sure. The second issue that we've got is that there have been lots of attacks on their system. They built their system by buying different companies and trying to put them together, but there's naturally some problems with that. If any of you work for large companies, this is one of the biggest issues that you have. And having a good cyber cell is going to ensure that you can check that there's no leakages in the system. Okay? So that's another issue. Okay. Just think about some non-accounting issues that should be striking us. Think about the makeup of the board. Is there anything you would say about the board directors that they have? You met all the board directors. Is there anything that strikes you in terms of risk?
Well, for a missile company, no tech-savvy.
Exactly. For a missile company, there is not one tech-savvy director on their board. Not one of them actually understands the technology. That's a major risk. And this is a challenge that you'll find with all the IT companies that are being set up. As soon as the founder steps away, are there other people there that have enough knowledge of the system? So that's one really important point. Okay, anything else about the makeup of the board?
Related to the other company.
Sorry?
Related to the one more company.
So there's an issue that there appears to be some kind of related party transaction going on, something to do with the CEO, but we don't know. Because remember, we're being given an insight, but the rest of the board don't know that that discussion is going on. Okay, so there could be a related party issue. Anything else about the board? So one point is that they're not particularly tech savvy.
The other is probably over-reliant. I think the audit chair is probably relying more on, let's say, the view of CEO, probably, and not taking a step back and really challenging whether that's the right view.
So that's one really important point. Is the audit firm actually challenging the CEO? We have all worked with companies where the CEO is intimidating or difficult and we don't want to upset them, but the risk is that something like this is going on behind the scenes, right? So that's one issue. But the other, I want to draw your attention back to a particular scene.
Chairman is an outsider.
Chairman is an outsider, that's one issue.
Which makes other people gang up.
Yes, yes, that's very true. So there has been some ganging up. So there seems to be a lot of politics with that board. And that's always a dangerous position to be in, because as an outsider, as an auditor, you need to know that the board is working together, right? Now, if you remember this scene, we have the audit partner, and we also have various other people, right? So we don't need the sound, sorry. Sound is okay. So we have this audit meeting, or and risk committee meeting. This is where they're discussing about sales and whether there could be impairment. Now I want to ask you, who is asking the questions and who is answering the questions? Who's answering the questions?
Audit chair?
I think CFO.
No, look who it is. I don't know if you can see the guy on the right-hand side at the back. That's the audit partner. The audit partner is answering questions that the non-executives are asking him. They're asking him, do you think the sales are enough? Do you think the three S1A, S1B, S1C are sufficiently different? Who should be asking the questions and who should be answering?
The board should be asking.
It should be the reverse, right? It should be the reverse. But this is a challenge we have as auditors. Often, if we have a firm which is a client and they're not sure, they will try to blame us. They will try to put the responsibility on us. It is absolutely crucial that we stand up to them, because he is effectively advising the company on their strategy. And if he's advising them on their strategy, it's a conflict of interest. Does that make sense? Yeah? So that's another important point that came out. Okay, so we've done the accounting issue, we've done the board of directors, we've done the audit committee, we've talked about Prementel, we've talked about this potential related party transaction. So a fairly junior girl on the audit said, what happened with that issue that I brought up? There was this company and we think it's a related party. What did the audit manager do? He brushed it aside, absolutely. So how do you think the audit junior is going to react in the future when she has something to tell him?
She'll not probably bring it up.
She's not going to bring it up. Yeah. This is something that we don't realise we often do with our juniors. Because we're so busy telling them what to do, we're not allowing them to think for themselves. She's actually quite a feisty girl, we'll see, through this, because she doesn't give up. But often, our staff will just say, it's easier to keep my mouth shut. We don't want that. They are the eyes and ears. They are the ones who spend more time at the clients. You should really be chatting with them much more. Yes.
Question.
Yes.
Now, is the audit partner here?
Yes.
Being the business partner?
Yes. Is
audit partner?
Yes.
Being the business partner for the enterprise?
If the firm was sufficiently big, if this wasn't an audit and risk committee meeting, then to have him as a business partner would be fine. But in this particular case, he's overstepping his mark as auditor. Does that answer your question?
That's one of the things, because we have always been, when we did our articles,
yes,
35 years back,
yes,
we had one small paragraph.
Yes.
The auditor is a friend, philosopher, guide.
Yes.
Today,
yes,
he is a friend, philosopher, friend, when he is a friend and a guide, he is disqualified.
That's very true. That's very true. Yes.
I was also surprised when I saw that particular slide. It said that you expect the auditor to be a business partner.
Yeah.
So I think here, I think he's stepped into that role.
Yeah, you're right. Now, if he had brought it up, see, I agree with what you're saying. I guess what I'm saying is, he should still have been asking those questions to the others. And then, if he prepares a management letter saying that these are areas I'm concerned about, and I think this is what you need to develop, that makes it okay as a business partner. But here I think he's overstepping. He's answering for the client. So I still believe, honestly, that an auditor should be a friend, philosopher and guide. However, what they should do, or what you should be doing, is teaching your clients to critically think, not doing the thinking for them. So it's all about asking the questions, not giving them the answers. Yeah?
If I may add
yes.
this question. Because this is, I am from industry, not in practice.
Yes.
And this is a common pitfall that we also notice within the industry. Yeah?
Yes.
So within finance domains, earlier it was more a single pillar providing
yes.
all kinds of services.
Yes.
Now even those pillars is broken up into three. With
yes.
one pillar focusing only on business partnering.
Yes.
One pillar focusing on
audit,
planning and analysis.
Yes.
And the third pillar on accounting and reporting part.
Right.
So that there is no conflict of interest, whichever way. Right. So this we see also in industry happening, and try and put firewalls between the three pillars. But I think as auditors, if you are going to wear a single hat, it is important to know which hat you are wearing for which meeting.
No, I think that's a good point, and I think that idea of the segregation between the three pillars makes sense. And if you have different partners involved in it, in a 6-partner or larger firm, I think it works because you can still pass information with the client's permission to the others. But I see where you're coming from.
That's a known risk.
It's a known risk. Okay. So we've talked about cybersecurity. Oh yeah. Okay. What about this point of there were two options to close the cybersecurity problem? One is to do the patch, or the other is to completely restructure. What honestly would have been the best thing for the firm?
Not an easy call, because
they've got cash flow problems. But you see, the challenge is they are running the company based on cash flow problems, not running the company to be profitable in the future. This is a huge risk. And yes, if they decided to do that whole piece of work now, they would have to extend the bank facilities. But it's a question of, profit now, pay later. Or the other way around, pay now and profit later. So, I think alarm bells should be ringing in our mind about why are they making these decisions? Yeah? Does that follow? Okay, so we talked about cybersecurity.
I would disagree a little bit because I think it's also a benefit of hindsight. Because when you are there taking that call,
yes,
you don't have definite information either way, right?
Yeah.
And I think one question that lady asked, how many attacks have been there and have
yes.
any of them been successful?
Yes.
So you know that these attacks have not been successful, then it's a call that you need to take, go left or right and say, okay, we have a cash flow issue,
yes.
we might have an interest outgo impacting our profits. Nothing big has happened, so probably go for the option B. But yeah, looking at the industry,
absolutely, that's it. You look at the industry, you look at the industry, you look at the fact that they've got competitors coming up, you look at the fact that there's been a significant increase in attacks. Really, if you're driven by your future, that's the correct call to make. Even though it potentially means...
Yeah, and then that's where the wisdom of the board comes in because they are not under immediate pressure, right?
And if they had the right people on the board, I think the decision could have been very, very different. Okay, so we talked about option 1. What about the proposal from the auditors that, so the current partner has now become the senior partner of the firm, and the new partner is somebody who's worked within the firm and has worked on that audit before. Does that sound like a good compromise?
I see a red flag there because you don't get so much of an independent perspective.
You don't get an independent perspective, that's true. We all hate audit rotation, let's be honest, we do. Because we've spent all this time getting to know these clients, suggesting things, etc. We have a great relationship with them. But do we, is it actually going to benefit the client? So one view is, it's still not really that independent view. Others, what do you think? Do you think it's okay?
Well, first year of a new auditor is not going to be really great.
First year with a new auditor is not going to be great in any circumstance. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's not going to work.
So it could be a good compromise situation. It could be. And this is what we often do, right? As auditors, this is something that we'll do. We'll shift it between audit partners. So in the UK, we have a 7-year rotation for audit partners within a firm. But now we also have this new legislation that, in theory, it was to open up the market to give less dominance to the Big Four. They said compulsory rotation. But if you look, there was a report that was produced by ICAI just last week, which said that 95% that rotated to another Big Four. So it didn't really bring in any of the smaller firms, and that I know is a big concern, the dominance of the Big Four. Okay, so those are all issues that we've seen. Let's go back and let's see what happens. Does anyone have any other questions on what's happening? Is there anything you don't understand what's happening? Is it interesting? It is, isn't it? It makes accountancy seem actually quite glamorous.
And it's practical challenges, because with this impairment testing,
yes,
it's something that you face every quarter or every 6 months, right?
Yeah, exactly. And getting you to think from a different perspective. We tend to always agree with the experts, right? And that's a big challenge that we have. Right. Okay, can we put this up?
Which means the redesign will take several months and then require testing. So the launch can't take place in September. Look, it's critical that the new technology is reliable.
But how can the development of S1D get so far and then need a redesign? I mean, why weren't the key elements tested earlier?
The testing was pushed back from April to the end of July, due to the delays in the final development phase.
Why wasn't the board made aware of these problems?
I was assured that it would pass the test. Then we could still have launched on time.
This delay will damage investors' confidence in the company.
What are we saying about a new launch date?
We're now aiming for March next year.
Right. I wanted us to hold an early discussion on fraud risks to help with the audit planning. And after today, if anyone has concerns about anything they see during the audit, please let me or Joe know, no matter how trivial it might seem. But how much did you and Joe really understand at that meeting? I've seen the presentation, but the cash flow forecast relies much more on S1C sales compared to last year. Take those sales out and we're looking at a material adjustment. All I've said to Alex is that I'll be bringing an independent technology expert to the meeting with the chief tech guy. If I'd known you'd bump into him at the dinner last night, I'd have briefed you. No. I don't know what I'll do if that's the conclusion. Yes. Yes, I'll talk to you before making a decision.
Subjective nature of the judgments, we really can't accept the substantially increased impact proposal.
Final profit could be reduced by nearly 30%, and we'd be in breach of our bank covenants.
I hear what you say, I do. But I don't believe I or any other members of the committee can easily ignore the conclusions of an independent expert with extensive experience in technology design.
Our senior tech guys dispute the report's conclusions, and the auditors are being inconsistent. Last year, they accepted the link between the original technology and S1C.
Well, so did my committee. But since reading this report, I've been wondering whether we should have accepted the figures last year quite so quickly. I'll need to consult with other members of the committee on this.
So, what are you working on?
Nothing exciting, just some testing of expenditure.
Oh yeah? I did some of that last year. Anything interesting? You haven't come across a supplier called Prim and Tell, have you?
I don't think so. Why? I checked it. Payments are still being made to Prim and Tell, more than last year, but...
Thanks. Maybe I'll mention this to Joe.
I sent Charles a copy of the auditor's expert's report, and he believes you must at least ignore future S1C revenue in the forecast.
But Liz, is there really enough in the report to justify such a large adjustment?
Roger, you know as well as I do we can't work backwards from the consequences to form a judgment on the accounting. Yes, the expert's view is subjective. Yes, there's still some reliance on the original technology, but do I now feel comfortable in maintaining the current technology value in this year's accounts? No, I don't.
Do you have a minute? You said we should tell you if we came across anything concerning.
Yes.
Well, payments are still being made this year to Prim and Tell, the company supplying those intelligence reports.
We looked into this last year. Sam flagged up the supplier due to issues with its invoices. Sam also noticed that Richard Dalton's sister was one of Prim and Tell's founding directors, but the sister had resigned before Prim and Tell was engaged.
Did she maintain any ownership in Prim and Tell?
It's unclear. All shares are held by offshore companies.
I briefed Patrick on all of this. He met with Richard, I think he was shown some reports, and Richard assured him that none of his family had any continuing ownership or control over Prim and Tell.
So why is there a problem with the continuing payments?
Prim and Tell's engagement was supposed to have ended, and yet payments have continued, become more frequent.
Well, so they changed their minds, so what?
Well, I couldn't find any reports on last year's file, so I did an internet search of their current directors. While Richard's sister may have resigned, her husband, Richard's brother-in-law, is still one of the directors.
I still don't believe that write-down was necessary. And your new senior partner had no problem accepting the valuation. Let's hope you've no more nasty surprises. If there's anything else I can.
There is one thing I might need to ask you about.
Really? Well, I hear now.
I don't think this is the right place.
Nonsense. Ask away, please.
It's about Prim and Tell, that Intel company.
Yes.
We've been struggling to get hold of any of the reports produced by Prim and Tell this year. Tom Noble is away, and neither his secretary nor yours know where the reports are.
Well, that's restricted access. They contain very sensitive information.
We'll need to see them in order to close down this inquiry.
I understand. I'll get them sent over.
I did have another question about your family's links to Prim and Tell.
I told Patrick that all ended some time ago.
I know, but I understand your brother-in-law remains one of the directors.
That's not true. My ex-brother-in-law, Mike. Yeah, he's still a director. Mike's good at gathering info, but change on your competitors. But, well, as my sister will tell you, it's a complete nightmare to work with. After they split, I got to know Mike's team really well and saw how good they were at gathering intelligence. Samantha, good to see you.
So early?
Well, I was having a good time, till your protégé started her interrogation. Really? Insurance I gave you about my family having no connection with Prim and Tell. And apparently, it's not good enough for her. She doesn't believe that the reports exist until she sees them. What gets me most is that Prim and Tell isn't even a major supplier. So why so much time being wasted on this? After the write-down fiasco, I'm going to London. She really knows what she's doing.
Hi. What happened between you and Richard on Tuesday evening?
Nothing. He was in a foul mood. It's no wonder. Have you seen this morning's announcement? They've had to postpone the launch again until September. The share price has taken a big hit.
Really? When I caught up with him, he said he was tired of being interrogated.
He asked me whether he could help with anything.
And you asked him about Prem Intel?
I've been told the brother-in-law was still a director, but it turns out that he and Richard's sister divorced some time ago.
Why didn't you talk to me first? I got assurances about this last year.
You didn't know about the brother-in-law back then. I had to ask him. Not disclosing a family interest would be an integrity concern.
So the issue's now closed?
Not quite. Did you see any reports last year? There are no copies on file. My interrogation has led to us receiving a pile of Prem-Intel reports this morning, which are being reviewed. I've added an extra line in his management rep letter for Richard to confirm that there's no continuing family interest in Prem-Intel.
Really?
There's been a recent connection, and Prem-Intel's ownership is unclear. If there's no interest, he shouldn't have a problem.
Are you sure you really needed that? With the launch being postponed again, he's going to be feeling a great deal of pressure.
I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. Don't have much time to discuss them. Don't be like that. I'll try and get there as soon as I can. Bye.
Did you get through them all? Yep. They all check out? Any issues? Make sure you do a note of the file. I didn't expect to see you in today. How's your mother?
Oh, much better, thanks. Sorry for failing. Did you want me to do anything more on that Prem-Intel issue?
Sarah's not comfortable with that. Turns out your research wasn't completely accurate. That director is Richard's ex-brother-in-law.
Really? I'm sorry, that was my fault. Did you want me to have a look at the Prem-Intel reports?
No need. Dan reviewed them last night. Sarah said she wanted confirmation this morning before she signs off. You should concentrate on tidying up any loose ends.
Okay. Okay, so what are the big things that have happened now?
I have to have more ladies on the team.
Sorry?
I have to have more ladies on the team.
Need more ladies on the team. So if you look at what's happened, Sarah is facing an intimidation threat from two different quarters. What are the two different quarters? Who's
The CEO.
the CEO and the senior partner? It seems like the senior partner is, you know, some way always on the client's side, okay? Which should, in theory, be ringing alarm bells in Sarah's mind, but is not for whatever reason at the moment, or maybe won't be. We'll see further on. Do you think it was appropriate that she talked to him at that event?
I would say if it's a pressing concern for her, I think it was right for her to. Yeah, she said that it's not a right opportunity now.
She said it's not a right opportunity, but he insisted, and she talked. Do you think that conversation should have been done there, or should have been done somewhere else?
So all this being done in a place where you have the control.
Yeah, even though it was a pressing concern, she could have said to him, listen, I can't talk to you about it now. This is a social gathering and I really want you to enjoy it, but I will come and see you first thing tomorrow morning. It needs to be in a professional environment, preferably where the auditor has some control, and where it can be documented. She can't go back to the office and document, oh, further to our discussion at the party last night, you confirmed to me. She can't do that, right? So as an auditor, one of the big things, and I know that if Shyamlal Agrawal was here from the Audit and Assurance Board, he'd back me up. Audit evidence is absolutely crucial, and correspondence with your client, emails to your clients, clarifying points, is extremely crucial. It's the only thing that is going to ensure that you are not, or you are exonerated if someone attacks your character, says that you did something that wasn't right. Okay? So certainly Sarah should have been tougher in that situation. What do you think she should have said? I know this is very difficult because he is a senior partner, but what should she have said to the senior partner when he came in and started asking her questions? What should she have said?
I think she stood up even currently, and I think, yeah, if those are the concerns she has in her mind, I think she has every right, or she can explain that, yeah, I want to get my own comfort. To make sure.
Absolutely. I would like to get my own comfort, which is why I've done certain things. Now, if you notice, one of the things that she did, you know, the phone call earlier in this scene, we don't know who she was talking to, but it probably was Patrick, the senior partner, where she said, I am bringing my own technology partner to this event, to the company, because I want proof myself. She said that, right? And as a result, the technology person, the technology expert has said that S1C sales should be kept separate, right? They should be effectively ignored for the valuation of the asset. Now, if she hadn't made that decision, then she would have been in line with what the previous auditor said. And that's what the CEO brought up. He said, the auditors are being inconsistent. Having said that, the only thing we have on our side is the ability to change our minds. To say that, listen, up to last year, we thought this was the case. We have now done this extra work, and therefore we now understand this to be the case. Your clients are not going to like it, but at the end of the day, your duty is to the shareholders of the company, which could be the CEO, but is likely to be other people as well. So it does make sense for you to be able to state that you had a concern. But there is one other concern that I have in this situation. As an auditor of a cyber defense company, should she or should she not have experience in this area?
It's quite debatable, because you cannot have experience in each of the companies.
Very true. We can't have experience everywhere.
That's why you bring an expert, and say rightly brought in an expert.
But can you just rely on an expert, is what I want to ask you. What does that auditing standard say?
Independent expert is reliable. If you have taken the internal expert team, it would be not correct.
True.
So independent expert is reliable.
Under what circumstances?
Even if it's independent expert, you are still owner for the opinion.
That's it. You are still responsible for the opinion. So you cannot say, I brought in an independent expert, he verified the system, and he's validated this accounting treatment is best. We can't absolve ourselves of the responsibility. We will have to go through that document, and we will have to be sure, we will have to ask them questions, we have to be clear on that technology as well. Now, I know because I was an auditor, right? And I was an auditor in Eastern Europe in the 90s, just after the fall of the Iron Curtain, where there were thousands of government-run organizations that were being taken over by private entities. And I can tell you one of the reasons I got out of auditing was because there were so many times where I didn't understand and I was told to rely on the expert, and it went against everything that I believed to be integrity, right? I didn't have the experience. I was quite young, I was 27 at the time. So I'd had maybe 5 years of experience, and if you give me all these big machinery, these big assets, we're talking about acres of lumber yards and machinery and equipment for everything from oil and gas to everything. And remember, this was in the pre-Google days, where Ernst & Young, who I used to work for, Ernst & Young didn't have this concept of globalized teams. I felt very vulnerable. And so I chose to get out of the profession and teach about it rather than actually do it. So I do understand where you're all coming from, because I have been called in to be an expert on certain companies. So I do understand both sides. But I go back to your point, which is absolutely, at the end of the day, it's your opinion. You cannot rely on that independent expert. So that's extremely important there. Okay, it started with a board meeting. Part 2 started with a board meeting of the launch delay of the S1D. So that was being delayed because there were problems. What impact does that have on the company?
Again, impairment question.
Impairment question is one. What else? Cash flow. Cash flow. If they're delaying S1D sales, then that means they've got another X number of months they have to get through before they get any cash from S1D. So impairment and cash flow are big issues at this stage. Do you think this is something that needs to be flagged up to the auditors? In theory, they're already breaching their covenants. They know that there's now going to be an impairment write-down. The question of going concern does come in. And the company has to be honest with the auditors about the situation. Sarah hasn't mentioned this at all. How are you going to survive? How are you going to be able to get through the 1 year that we have to, kind of validate and give assurance on in our audit report? Where are you giving me the insight that you're going to be able to do that? That hasn't come up at all in anything that we've seen. So that's another thing. If we're talking about preempting risks, how many times are we looking at the client's business and saying, are they really in a position to carry on as a going concern? Are there issues that are going to impact them at that level?
There was a part where the auditors were talking that they saw the delay, they heard about the delay from the news system.
Yes.
Was that the context?
Yes, absolutely. So that was one of the issues. Have you read the newspapers? She should have known about that before. She met him 2 nights ago. He should have said to her, I just want to let you know there is going to be a profits warning, right? That didn't happen. So finding out from newspapers is not the ideal way. You'd expect, hopefully, to hear from the company itself. Okay, so we've talked about the launch delay of the S1D. Okay, let's talk about Prementel. The junior who stayed up all night to review the reports. Did he know what he was doing? Did he know what he was looking for?
No. Already completed in the first place.
Exactly, I completed it. And Joe is like, any problems?
No.
No? He's too scared. He's too scared. As auditors, I often think, as well as guide, philosopher, friend, we need to be telepathic. Because we need to know what's going on in the minds. It was clear that he didn't know what he was doing. And if Joe had just asked him a couple of pointed questions, what did you find in the reports, it would have come out. So, another point for you all, how much time do we spend with our juniors? How much do we actually teach them on what to do? Or do we expect others to do it? Can we coach them? That's another thing we should be thinking about. So, in this audit firm, it doesn't look like there's much coaching going on. Talking of which, we had the girl go into the office of the partner to say she was concerned about an issue. Did you feel that the partner was giving her full attention? She wasn't. She was packing, she was putting on her jacket, she wasn't taking the conversation very seriously. what impression does that give to the junior staff? Nothing I say is going to be valued. Should I bother doing it? So these are all risks that are coming out, audit risks on the client side and on the audit team side. So more things to be aware of. Any other points that you would bring up from this section?
See, about coaching.
Yes.
I found amongst who are trained, like you just can see it over there itself.
Yeah.
One person is going beyond her call. Other person is just
behind the scenes, yeah.
Any amount of coaching for that fellow will be totally useless.
Yeah. So then you have to question: do you want that person in your team?
Huh? Yeah. You can't help it.
No.
You can't help it. Once a person steps in as an article, you have to keep him busy for 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he's there.
No, that's a fair point. That is a very fair point.
He's there.
But at least in his appraisals, those points need to be noted.
Everybody has good and moral character when I sign off.
Yeah.
nobody is found bad.
But that's a challenge because we don't improve unless we're forced to. I'll just give you one quick anecdote from my institute. Back in the 80s, the government said to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales, we need more chartered accountants, right? At the moment, we only have one for 50,000 people, we want one for 25,000 people, right? And the Institute in the 80s said, no, we have standards, we will only allow a certain number to get through. The government said, if you won't, then we will form other audit bodies that will. It's your choice. So the auditors, or the Institute went away and they talked to the firms and they talked to the students, and at that time I think our pass rate was still higher than you have here. I think it was around 25%, right? And the government said, we want that pass rate to be 90%. And of course the Institute was like, this can't happen. So the government said to them, we want you to be able to train them so well that 90% get through. We don't want you to make the exams easier. And what they did, and it still works today, and it's an extremely expensive option, but I think it has really helped the profession. What the Institute did was they said to training providers, we will accredit you as training providers. However, and we will coach you on how to coach your students to pass the exams. We will not give you the answers, because all the papers in the UK are not rote learning. They're very much about, here's a business situation, how would you deal with it? The Institute then spent money on the markers, retraining the markers, retraining the assessors, and retraining the training providers. Now the training providers turned around and said, we can give 25 or 30 or 50 days of training a year, but the firms have to pay for it, because we can't survive on, £1 or £5 a day. So the Institute went back to the firms and they said to the firms, you are going to have to now pay. You are going to have to pay for each article employee of yours to go for 30 days of training to one of our approved training providers, and you will have to spend this much. They turned around and said, we can't afford it. The Institute said, then cut how much you're paying them, and as soon as they qualify, and then put that money towards their education, as soon as they qualify, you can start paying them literally double. So that's what the Institute did. It worked with the training providers, said to the training providers, unless you get X% through, 80% through, we will not renew your accreditation. They said to the firms, you have to put into your contracts that you will give them 30 days, and if you don't give them 30 days, we will mark you down as an audit firm, etc., etc. So they got the whole ecosystem involved in this process, and therefore it worked. And now, honestly, the pass rate is about 70%. And it is not because the exams are easy, it is because everyone is trained in a way that they should be able to pass the exams. It's very difficult in a country like India, though. We are so much bigger, and you can't compare a Tier 4 city to a Tier 1 city in terms of training. So I'm not saying it's a solution for India, but what I'm saying is that's the way we should be thinking. How do we get all the parties together to work on things? Yeah? Okay, any other issues that came up here?
Point in a management representation was...
Sorry?
Point in a management representation.
Yes.
The senior partner said, do you really want that to be inserted?
Absolutely. Do you think it should be there? Do you think it should? Absolutely. If we have a doubt, it should go into the management representation letter. And for the partner to say he's going to be feeling the heat, are you sure you want to do that, is kind of putting the company's interest before the audit firm. And we should never be playing that advocacy role. So very good point. Yeah.
No, one question.
Yes.
Why should that line come there?
If you know, if you're concerned about something, and you've done your research, but you want additional assurance on it, it makes sense.
If I were a regulator, I would see it as a red flag. Either establish or don't establish. No question of taking a line from the...
Rather put it in the report and...
Yes, no question of taking a line. You either establish that it is not a related party, or we do this thing. But
it's very... Okay, I get where you're coming from, and you're absolutely right. That is how a regulator would look at it. I think how we'd argue it is, we went through the reports, and this is why documentation is so important. We still don't understand the shareholding pattern of Primatel, and that's the problem. And Richard can turn around and say, well, they're only one of our suppliers, why should we know? What they can confirm, though, is that there is no relationship.
And because as far of course, it depends upon the nature of the concern, but if it is a limited company, it's available on the website.
So, but the thing is, you're right, but what if the limited company says, so on the website it says that there's...
Not website, I'm sorry, in the regulatory filings.
Regulatory filings. So if it's a limited company in the UK, what would happen is you'd be able to go to Companies House and you'd be able to see who the shareholders are. But if the shareholders are companies abroad, like in the Seychelles or in the Bahamas or whatever, you wouldn't be able to get any further information. So that's where I think, if you've said that we've done everything we can in our power, he's saying he's not related, we're just asking for confirmation, I can see why they would put it in. But I do take your point that a regulator would see it as a red flag. I'm always thinking back to Nirav Modi and how he managed to do what he did. You know, it's quite unbelievable, but very audacious. And I don't think any experience, I think it would have taken, I don't know, an insanely amazing chartered accountant to be able to spot what was going on. It's easy in hindsight, isn't it? But anyway, okay. Does that answer? I mean, I think we have to agree to disagree. I do see your point there. I do. Any other points come up?
But a separate letter will do other than a representation letter?
Sorry, say again?
A separate letter will do in case you don't want to put it as part of the full replica?
No, no. You only have one representation letter, and everything should be included in that. A side letter would definitely be a red flag for the audit firm.
Submitted to the board, because you also have to declare to the board his interest.
That's true, but I still think it's better from an audit perspective that it's in the representation letter. You're right. Independently, he should have declared his interest to the board, and we would have, as auditors, looked through that to verify that there's nothing there, but we would still probably want some, you know, because there's been ex-brother-in-law, sister, I mean, it's in the papers today, Nirav Modi's sister is now involved. I mean, she was involved, but they've now proved that she was involved in 100 crore, you know, part of it. So I'm sure he never declared that to his board, that his sister was doing all these things. So, yeah.
I agree with your point, but that the management representation letter goes to a regulator, something
no, it won't. However, if there is a fraud discovered later, it's a way of the auditor not absolving themselves of the issue, but saying, look, we asked for additional information or assurance about this area.
Absolutely, because companies, even now it's not very clear, even if it's a listed company, getting the shareholders is fine, but if it's a company is holding, trusts are holding, getting to the real owner is very difficult.
It is, which is why we rely on them. That's why we always have that basic line which says that none of the shareholders have, none of the directors have related party transactions, etc. Okay. All right, let me move on to the next stage.
I just don't know how much we can rely on the S1D launch. It's got to be a big success if we're going to hit this year's forecast.
Definitely going to happen this September.
It's got to. Or it won't just be the tech boys getting fired. Roger already blames me for the delay. Last year's results haven't helped.
Sounds like you could do with some good news. We've made a short list for a big tender in New Generic.
What's the catch?
The official wants an incentive to choose our system if you prefer someone else's. I thought we could use Prenintel again.
That's not going to work. I believe this. A great official. There's 2,000 people in this country. Their jobs rely on us bringing in these contracts. Politicians, they just don't realise.
Sorry. I know what I can do.
What brings you down here?
I've had a tech security firm recommended to me. I was hoping you might be able to use it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've already awarded all the contracts to face of it.
It's a shame. I was really hoping you'd be able to use them. Where did you get this? You've got another baby on the way too. Exciting times. So can we start this conversation again? I had a cybersecurity firm recommended to me. I'll send an email. Right. Let's get another deal. Great. My Uncle Richard let him know. So my manager was chasing payment from a new generic company, and he was told that they were suspending all payments. The official who signed it has been suspended on suspicion of taking bribes on 2 other contracts. They're not paying until they've investigated all contracts, including ours. I'll find nothing wrong with ours. What I can't understand is why they didn't use our normal agents on this deal. And why were the due diligence checks carried out in the US? Richard, you need to talk. I don't know what I'm supposed to have done wrong.
Asking Tom whether he's been paying bribes for starters.
I didn't. I asked him why he left our usual agent out of this deal and how much he could trust anyone.
No one's made any allegation against us. Lots of companies have had their payments suspended.
I still think we should be flagging this up to the audit from this committee.
There's nothing to about it. Do you know how long it took me to talk down Tom? He's threatening to quit if he ends up the subject of some witch hunt. And you know how many good deals he brings into this company. We wait.
No pressure then. How many of you would have reported it to the audit in this committee at this time? That's very interesting.
But no allegation has been made. It's a serious step to start an investigation into a senior manager. I think we should wait.
Do you agree?
No, I don't. If this official's been seeking bribes on other contracts, why not us too? Why didn't we use our normal agent?
I agree with Charles. I also think we need some assurance on this in case the media pick it up.
Can internal audit investigate this?
Shouldn't we use external lawyers and forensic accountants?
I suggested an internal review because we need to act quickly and discreetly.
If we are going to investigate, we should bring in the specialists. A lot of the work can be done remotely and discreetly.
Okay. External.
You know what it feels like to question for hours like a suspected criminal? I thought we agreed the committee didn't need to know unless an allegation was made.
We didn't agree anything. That was what you said.
I was right. The lawyers didn't find any irregularities with the contract. No issues with the agents. No suspicious outflows of money authorised by Tom at all.
I still think they needed to know.
Even with all the damage it's caused. Tom thinks that it'd be difficult for him to remain here with all these rumours that are flying around.
Our lawyers said we could seek to enforce the contract, but that all 4 countries have a very strong defence due to the S1D launch delay. Chances are we'd lose.
So, 4 down. Out of the remaining 11 pre-orders, how many have been reconfirmed?
5 for definite. They're still waiting for reconfirmation from the other 6.
Alex will need a reforecast on S1D revenues for the board meeting. Are we getting any understanding as to why the orders are being cancelled?
2 of the countries have said they're going to produce the road, but it's just not credible they have the expertise.
That's if they are developing.
Richard, it's Chris. We need a meeting. It's unclear what was copied, but access was gained to the design database on 4 occasions on the 23rd of February, including access to the blueprints for S1D.
I thought the database defenses had been upgraded in the first place.
They were, but the attackers didn't gain entry directly. They went in via a subsidiary of ours and their finance systems. From there, they were then able to navigate into our central finance system and create their own internal login credentials. Those IDs gave them access to all systems, including the design database.
Why did we know about this in February?
It was a sophisticated attack. The credentials that they created matched our in-house format, so the auto-detection software didn't flag the attack.
Have we upgraded those defenses since?
Yes. If they had attacked 1 month later, then that entry point would have been strengthened in the next phase of the project.
We don't know whether the cancellations are linked to the attack, how many more will cancel, and how hard profits will be hit. But we need to consider making a disclosure to the market and what it should say.
Aside from the S1D cancellations, are there any other problems we should know about?
My other headaches are never-ending IT projects. The costs are going up to pace.
Well, this is an IT project.
Yes, but phase 3 overruns are well beyond our contingency. I've told Chris he needs to flag up much earlier any significant overspend. Hi, Alicia. Listen, how extensive was the investigator's review of payments? No offer? No, that's all I needed. I'll call you later. Hi, can you get me please all invoices and contracts on the IT project? Thank you.
I issued the IT project invoice. I raised it at my meeting with Chris this morning. He assured me that the work on the main hub ID system was carried out by that company.
Well, that's strange. The manager I spoke to was pretty certain that work was being done by an internal team. One of Chris's cost-saving measures, he said.
Sounds like he was mistaken. Hardly surprising given how many different work streams they have.
But he was so sure.
The work's being done. The supplier's on the approved list.
So what do we do now?
Nothing. Remember Breminton? We've got the assurance from the senior manager, so write it up and move on. Plenty more to be getting on with.
I'm going to be home in 20 minutes. I just need to check something out for work.
Sorry about the short notice and cryptic messaging, but this couldn't wait. We've got concerns about some of the payments on the IT project.
You're not alone. I've just been going through some of these contracts and invoices. A number of Phase 3 contractors don't appear to have much of a trading history. I was just about to get internal audits involved.
That may not be necessary.
The investigators have reviewed all the IT contracts. They've identified 5 payments made to 3 bogus suppliers, all controlled by Tom's associates. The police have now started their own investigation, so we can't interview him. Our lawyers have been told, off the record, that a payment from one of these companies was made to an account believed to be controlled by the official in New Genaria.
What about Chris?
So he's cooperated fully. He seems to have been blackmailed by Tom over an extramarital affair. He says he thought it was a one-off and then was asked to make more payments. He claims to know nothing about bribes, and there's no evidence to suggest he knew or that he took any of the money himself. Nevertheless, the lawyers still recommend that we terminate his contract.
The 2 of the larger payments were co-authorized by Richard. He'd have been anxious to keep revenue coming in to keep the stock price up.
What Richard pointed out, correctly, that he's authorised other large payments on the IT project to genuine suppliers, and that he couldn't have known that these suppliers were bogus. He denies any knowledge of the bribes or the fraud, and nothing suggests otherwise in a review of his emails.
And has the investigation now concluded?
All of the working scope set by the committee has been completed. However, the lawyers think they should review transactions before and outside of the IT project to get assurance that there's nothing else.
Is that really necessary? Is there any evidence to suggest that bribes were paid earlier or funded outside the IT project?
A forensic review was made of all payments made by the company over the last 5 years, looking for other bogus suppliers, and no other companies were identified.
I can't see any reason then to extend. The costs are enormous already.
Well, I don't think we can be criticised for stopping here. Agreed? Thank you.
I'm going to continue to the next part because it's very short and then we'll discuss.
Well, at least it draws a line with the whole storing business.
What's up? I thought you'd be happy.
I've been uncomfortable since hearing about Richard signing off on 2 of the larger payments. It made me wonder about those payments he authorised to Prem Intel for reports used by Tom.
But you satisfied yourself about the relationship with Prem Intel. And you got hold of all the reports and had them checked. And you got Richard to sign a rep letter confirming that there was no family link.
I took it out. You said...
Doesn't matter. You told us both there was no link and there was no evidence suggesting otherwise.
But what if the bribes started earlier? Were funded by payments to genuine suppliers? I think I should discuss this with Liz.
Think carefully before doing it. If you point them in the direction of the relationship with Prem Intel and there's no problem, you'll be criticised for extending an expensive investigation. If it turns out there was a problem with those payments, then the next questions you're going to be asked are why you didn't realise they weren't genuine, and why the replica didn't deal with the family connection.
The share price had just recovered from the profits warning when Tom Noble, Director of Global Sales, was arrested on suspicion of bribery. Well, I had a dilemma. I still had the feeling there was more, which hadn't yet come out. I couldn't stop wondering whether Richard had also been involved. He'd been so adamant the new Genaria deal shouldn't be reported to the committee, that his bonuses were tied to the share price. And I wondered why our chief tech guy had quit so soon after that write-down. I'd heard the rumours. So what did I do? I followed my instincts.
Okay, so just to summarise, because I know we've extended on time, there are a few things that happened there, and in the interest of time, I'll just say the points rather than ask you questions. One is, it was quite risky of Sarah and the audit team to go to the CFO and tell him that they're suspecting of fraud. Mainly because, at this stage, they don't know who's involved. The CFO himself could have been involved. So actually going and talking to the CFO could have been the wrong thing to do. We know, because we've watched the whole video, that the CFO was not involved. However, how did Sarah know?
She's not gone to the ARC.
Yeah, so that's potentially an issue. So what should she have done? Should she have gone to the ARC? Could she trust the company at all? Should she have gone to an external, someone within her firm, like the risk partner within the firm, to discuss what the next steps should be before she did that? So that's one thing that was quite important. The second is that it appears that the whole investigation of Tom Noble and the contracts and the bribery was not really known by the auditors until well after it had started. And that again is a concern. We would expect to hear that it had been discussed with the auditors, this had come up, and then what do you think about what happened with the senior partner again? Now you realise he wasn't involved, but what you realise is that he was covering his past, because he's the one who had made those decisions of ignoring Prementel, ignoring the potential related party link, etc., etc. So, in the interest of time, I won't go into any more detail. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I just wanted to cover just a couple of other points before I finish. So, really, it's not just about the work that you do and document, it's about your mindset. We're not saying that our clients are cheats and liars and we've got to catch them. All we're saying is, if we see alarm bells, it's our duty to investigate. And those alarm bells can come from the company itself, it can come from the news, or it could come from our junior employees. So, are we building relationships with our junior employees and the clients such that these things come out? Are we looking wider than just the compliance that we're supposed to do? And can we articulate those concerns that we have in a way to be able to minimise the risk? One of the Institute, the ICAW's taglines at the moment is, we're more than just a number. We don't just look at the numbers, we look at everything else that's going on. And your future is about being a trusted advisor. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope it was a different way to look at audit risk, and it's given you some ideas for ways in which you can alter your thinking going forward. I know that we have to close now because we're already extended, but just to let you know that I am around for the break. If you want any information on ICAW, what they're doing, membership of ICAW, which is now very easy for somebody who has 5 years experience, I'd be happy to do it. If you think there are areas where the institutes can work together, I'd love to hear about it, because I'd be happy to put proposals to both presidents. But most importantly, thank you for not falling asleep. Thank you for realising that accountants are actually quite interesting, and I hope it's given you lots of food for thought that we can perhaps discuss as we drink our coffee. Thank you. Thank you.
Friends, we had an excellent presentation, and the documentary film and made the session interactive and made it an outstanding presentation. Let us thank the speaker for her valuable time and knowledge share. Time to present a memento to speaker as a token of appreciation and gratitude. May I request our branch chairman Shravan Gurutur to come forward and present it. Thanks once again, thank you, speaker. Thank you, Chairman. Let's break for tea and reassemble in 15 minutes for our next technical session.